What's your response to this message?
That the sentiments expressed in it are vile and un-Canadian, and that they have no place in our society. Alberta, Charles, is the place where the first mosque in Canada, the second in North America, was built way back in the 1930s. And so Muslims are not new to part of the Alberta community. They have a multi-generational history in having helped to build this province, a history, a presence, a contribution that I've always respected and defended and will continue to without apology. Charles, I am often attacked on social media for being a friend to the Muslim community, for having been a minister of immigration that welcomed tens of thousands of new Canadians who are of the Islamic faith. As the federal multiculturalism minister and as provincial conservative leader, I have visited dozens of mosques and Islamic schools across Canada and through Alberta. I created a special program in the federal government that helped them to improve their security against potential vandalism and hate-inspired attacks. Defended, I threatened to, on behalf of the federal government, sue the government of Quebec if it proceeded with legislation banning people from working in the public service with hijabs, for example. And have visited many of the major Muslim countries in the world to strengthen Canadian relations. So my record is clear, which is why anybody who expresses hatred towards our Muslim neighbors, new Muslim Canadians, knows that they're not speaking on my behalf, and they certainly wouldn't be supporting me.
So despite the fulsome statement that you're making here and others that you've made in Alberta today and also on your Facebook page, you've still got people criticizing you, including, of course, your central critic, which would be the NDP, saying that you're not doing enough, Mr. Kenney, you're not doing enough to speak out against Islamophobia.
That's regrettable that they would seek to cheapen such an important issue with low-grade partisan politics, Charles. I have been there are thousands of Muslim Albertans who came to Canada while I was Minister of Immigration. My party has nominated at least two Muslim candidates that I know of, and potentially more, with several others who have run for nominations. Our party reflects the diversity of the province. In fact, we have more ethnic diversity in our Edmonton candidates alone than the other party, our main opponents, do have province-wide. And we have nothing to apologize for. Some apparently deranged individual has sent this letter. I don't know what their real political agenda is. It's clearly not to support my party, but rather to damage its reputation by using our logo on this piece of apparent hate literature, which we condemn without equivocation. I don't know what more I'm to do. Charles, we had a very rigorous pre-screening process for prospective Conservative candidates here, and through that identified in a couple of instances candidates who had made hateful remarks towards Muslims, and we barred them from running. To the contrary, I've encouraged Muslim candidates to step forward, and I'm glad that they've been nominated. So, I think we've done everything we can today. Charles, the very first words, July 6, 2016, I launched the Unity campaign to bring together the free enterprise parties in Alberta over 2.5 years ago. It happened to fall on Eid al-Fitr. I stood up on live national television, and the very first words out of my mouth were, before I begin, I would like to wish a blessed Eid to all of our Muslim Albertans who are celebrating today. Eid Mubarak. Does that sound just like somebody who is appealing to, or in at least tolerant of voices of hatred? That's profoundly offensive, the NDP would suggest it.
No, look, I don't have any amnesia, and because I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time, And clearly, all kinds of bigots and haters contact me that I never put on the air. I don't read 99% of their stuff. I'm reading the stuff that I read a few moments ago, this piece of vile garbage, because this has become an issue in Alberta, therefore an issue across the country. So I felt it incumbent upon me to read it. I'd love to believe that it only represents a handful of people. I've lived a real life in Canada. I've been on the other side of this. I know what hate feels like when you're exposed to it. I'd like to think, as I said earlier in the show, that this is a better country than it was when I first experienced hate. My family did in Canada in the 1960s. I'd like to believe that, but we're always going to have hate. I don't have any metric. I don't have any Stats Canada statistic on whether there's more hatred in the hearts of Canadians or less. I don't know. All I know is it isn't just a handful of people. Unfortunately, it's more than just a handful. And yes, it exists on the left and on the right. We understand that. What is it about the term, Jason Kenney, Islamophobia? You would have no trouble saying, I'm opposed to racism, I'm opposed to anti-Semitism, I'm opposed to, I could go down the list. What is it about Islamophobia that makes it much more difficult to say, I'm opposed to it?
Well, I am. And I've said that in the past. So I don't think that's a matter of any. So if you've had intention, there are there.
Right, but this is the today thing. Like, what would be difficult? Is it because that would be giving your opponents what they're looking for? Like, what would be difficult today to also add? I'm opposed to Islamophobia. I'm just asking.
There's nothing difficult. I'm opposed to Islamophobia. I've said that.
But today, the accusation is that you haven't spoken out specifically against Islamophobia. That's the political accusation.
But that's not accurate, Charles. I have in the past. I'm sorry if that. I'm not sure that there's some particular formula that I'm supposed to use in every day in every particular instance. But I've condemned Islamophobia many, many times. I've done that without any reservation, and continue to. There is many different forms of hatred sadly in our society, some of which does target our Muslim neighbors, and I make no bones about it. There is hatred, or in the narrow definition of Islamophobia, fear. Phobia is a fear; it's an irrational fear. I frankly think that the term understates the nature of it, because we shouldn't just dismiss it as a fear. It's a hatred. It's worse than that, and it should be unanimously condemned in our society.
See, I think that if you say I'm against religious bigotry, I'm against the hatred of Islam, that's an intelligent approach. I don't know whether you have to pick up on every slogan, on every buzzword, on every piece of social justice paraphernalia in order to be a decent human being. Those are my thoughts. But today, that's what you're accused of, that there's something wrong with you because you haven't taken this particular letter and said that you're opposing Islamophobia, that this is what it's about, is blah, 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 blah.
Charles, I have countless occasions in the past condemned hatred directed at Muslims. Using the term Islamophobia, I think it's worse than a fear. I think hatred is worse than a fear, to be honest with you. So I think that term itself is limiting. It's not sufficiently expansive to describe the deep-rooted hatred that we see sometimes expressed in violence towards Muslims and people of other faith minorities. But Charles, look, what I don't understand is why this is falling on me as the United Conservative Party. There's no evidence that this letter came from any member of my party. So somebody goes and puts a party logo on a piece of hate literature, almost certainly is not associated with that party. So I condemn this without equivocation. I condemn Islamophobia. But I don't take for a moment ownership over what some lone lunatic does.